Good morning. You seeing and hearing me?
Yes, everything's great, Robert.
Perfect. I don't have anything to say except that I'm happy that people are showing up and look forward to replying to questions.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we got a good crew here of almost 30 people already. So, does anybody have a question for Robert?
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, Robert.
David, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you feeling?
I'm okay.
Good. A friend of mine asked me to ask this question. If someone is an alcoholic, should he just accept that or try to change?
Okay, that's really a deep question. Is there someone who can try to change? Is the first question. And we assume that we can just decide to do something and then do it. But is that true? See, that's once you start down that road and ask that question, just an entire landscape of questions opens up. What is free will? What is destiny? And was I born to be this way? Was I born to be an alcoholic? Or is this some habit I picked up because I can't face reality? And if I am an alcoholic, what do I do about it? See, that's not so easy. We assume that we have these powers. And most of us live as if we had those powers to choose and decide and just make our minds up and then that's it. But if that were true, I think the human race would look a lot different from the way it looks now. I don't know if that answers the question at all. It just raises more questions.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Mhm. I see a lot of old friends out here. It's very nice.
Why don't you want to be called a teacher, Robert?
I don't want to be called a teacher because the thing that people are asking me about is something that I don't know how to teach. If someone wanted me to be a photography teacher, I might take that on. I'm a pretty good cook too, so I could probably teach how to get along in the kitchen. But if you ask me how to see that you aren't in charge of your life, ultimately, um, and that all of this is just arising, including myself, as one, as John Troy would say, systemic outcome or gesture. I have seen that deeply and it changed my life, but I don't know how to teach that to anyone. I can speak about it, which is what I've been doing for the last 15 years. But how to give you a practice or how to, I don't have it.
But you have written about it, and from personal experience, I can say that I've learned a lot from it. So I guess it's partly semantics. And I understand if you called yourself a teacher, you'd be in the same boat with a bunch of charlatans or quacks. So I don't know if that's part of it.
Well, that is part of it. I definitely don't want the spiritual teacher designation because I question what the word spiritual means, if anything, to begin with. But, I did psychotherapy for a long time, and I still think of myself more as a therapist than I do as a teacher. When someone speaks to me and I feel that that person is in pain, and an idea presents itself to me to be expressed that might help that person, well, then I just do that. I mean, it's a natural. Um, but that's not what I see the spiritual teachers doing for the most part at all. I don't think they address people's personal suffering very much at all. except by telling them that it's just an illusion. Well, since no one else wants to speak, I'll just talk about that for a moment. To say that something is just an illusion or you're only dreaming is a very strange idea. I mean, if one thing is an illusion, then it's all an illusion. Or how can there be any truth if you say that my everyday experience is an illusion? Then my everyday experience is all I have. So as soon as you say that, you're telling me that any truth, so-called truth, spiritual truth, is just a statement, not a fact. I could go into more about what is a fact and what isn't, but I'd rather open it up for further questions. So
I have one question here in YouTube. It says, Robert, are you writing another book? Your two books seem concise to me. Is there more?
I'm not writing another book at present, and I don't anticipate that I will. Getting pretty old now, and I'm jealous of my time. And a book is a big production. It takes a year or two of pretty hard work, the kind of book that I would want to write. So I think I won't.
Okay.
Robert, can I ask you a question? Like you were talking about truth. And we know, I mean, that truth, I don't know if truth exists as such. But I think that truth might be agreement or consensus. Like in saying, like the way I see something and you see something, and if there is an area of agreement, then maybe there is some truth there, you know? But from perception wise, we all are perceiving this world differently, you know? And so I don't know if there can be truth. I mean, because you did bring up the word truth, and truth is kind of elusive, you know? And the only way I can see there being truth is if there is agreement between people about certain things. There's a commonality that runs through the dream, you know, as such. I'm only talking about dream. And yeah, so if you have experienced something and I have experienced something, then we find the commonality that's there, and that would be truth. Would you say that?
The question is, how can belief be distinguished from truth? Because we all believe certain things. Like I believe,
Yes.
I believe right now that there are people out there in various places who have come to this meeting and that you all actually exist, but I can't prove that. I can assume it, but I can't prove it. So you are saying that if a number of people agree on something, then that makes it truth. Let me check in on that with you. Is that what you're saying? That if a bunch of us all agree on something, then it's true?
Yes. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, is that possible? I mean, can I say that truth exists if there is agreement?
Okay. There's various, well, I believe that the idea of absolute truth is an illusion that we want to have in order to make our existence seem more solid. But what can we really know? All we have is our perceptions, feelings, and thoughts that are being experienced somehow via the human nervous system. And we know already that our perceptions of the world are only a version of the world. I see one thing and my donkeys see another thing, but we're both looking in the same direction. So I have, in general, the human primate animal view of the world, which we all have. And then I have the one that this particular animal, who was born with certain attributes, and then went through years of experiences, sees the world. I see the world in a certain way. So I don't think I'm seeing the world truthfully. I think I am seeing a version of it that I believe in. But what makes me believe in it? Well, there are three possibilities that are usually discussed in this field, which is called epistemology, which is the science of what we can know and how we can know it. Maybe science is too strong a word. It's a philosophical inquiry about what do we know and how can we know it. And the first test is what is called correspondence. And that means that something that I believe corresponds to something that happens in the real world. So if I believe that if you are cut, you will bleed, and then I'm cut and I bleed, my belief is now in correspondence with the facts as I perceive them. But that's still only my perception. I could be dreaming that I've been cut and that I'm bleeding. For all I know, the whole thing could be a dream. So that's a problem. And then there can be correspondence that may make me imagine that I'm not seeing the truth, but I'm mistaken. Let's say I feel that it's around noon and I want to know the exact time. And then I walk into another room that's got a clock on the wall and it says 12 o'clock. Now, that means that my belief that it was around midday corresponded to the true facts. And now I will believe that it's noon because the clock says so. But what if that clock is broken and it got stuck on noon? You see, then I've been given an apparent correspondence that actually does not correspond at all to the real situation. So there's a real problem there. That's the first. I feel like I'm giving a talk here. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'll go through the other two quickly. Another way that we have of judging truth is coherence. That means that a new fact that I want to assess fits in. It coheres with what I already know. So I begin to accept it just based on that fact. Just based on that fact. For example, suppose I've never seen a particular kind of animal and don't know what it is. And as I approach the animal, it makes some kind of sound. It's not like a dog barking. It's not like a lion roaring, but it's a sound. Well, then that coheres with the idea that I have that there are other animals in the world and I'm not just dreaming this. It helps to add some solidity to my point of view. Then the third way is pragmatism, and that is we believe what works. Like I believe that when I turn the key in my car to start it, the engine will start. That's just pragmatic. So I have learned turning the key starts the car. But that may not always be true. What if the battery's dead or the car is out of gas or it's the wrong key? So you see, each time we try to say that something is true and base it on our observations of the world, we really can't be sure of that at all. I don't know if that...
Yes,
Yeah, please.
yes, I understand. There will be other variables that will influence the truth each time. But at the same time, when all of us are looking at a dog, we all know it's a dog. That's the truth. But you might see the dog as being vicious, and I will see it as being a gentle dog or whatever. But we'll all agree that it's a dog. So there is truth in that.
Just give me a minute here. I've messed something up here on my screen, and I'm not.
Okay.
not seeing you and I'm not hearing you clearly. I wish I could see everybody, but I will. I won't belabor it. Let's just continue from here.
All right, did you want to ask your question again, Razia?
No, like Robert said, normally there are so many variables that can influence the outcome. Like so we cannot be certain of certain things. Like I can say that it's true. Then I said, but if we all are looking at a dog, we all know it's a dog. Although our perception of the dog might be different, but we all know it's a dog. Isn't that true?
Yes, that's true, but that's by definition. That we know it's a dog because we define that kind of thing as a dog. That's a convention. But and that's fine. So we all agree that a spoon is a spoon, a door latch is a door latch, and we know how to use these things. That's a level where we have defined truth as what works for us.
Yes.
But my critique is not about that kind of truth. My critique is when someone starts talking about the absolute or absolute truth or God. It's true that someone just assumes that God exists. On what basis? It's not like a dog.
Yeah.
You see the difference?
Yeah, in fact, that's the part I like about you, because you ask the question, how is it true for you? How is it true for you?
Um,
That's your question always to people who.
Yes, my question is, you know that how? When someone says, I am the absolute or one, I say, really? You know that how? Well,
Yes. Experience?
but yes, we have experiences, but we don't know to what they refer in reality. We have a human experience of the world. We have our experience of the world is what a living human animal experiences. And then to jump from that to we know how the universe works, it's non-dual, there's only one thing, and it's God and all the rest of it, that's a big jump. I don't feel justified in making that jump myself, and that's all I'm saying. When I hear the spiritual teachers making that jump, I stop listening to them because I realize that they've come to the same place. If they've thought about it deeply enough, they've come to the same place I have, but ignored that place. You ignore the place where you see human limitation. And you say, well, I'm not really limited. I can know the whole universe. And I say, no, you can't. You can barely know the back of your own hand, much less the universe and how that works. I guess that's clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess also people will say that there is a point when you go and you say, I don't know. I don't know. It's past this point, there's nothing that can be known. Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, sure. Let me just go a little
All
further.
right, we got okay, go ahead. We got a hand raised for
Oh,
next
that's
question.
okay. Let's continue.
Okay, Dennis Gallagher, go for it.
Hello.
Hi,
Can
Ben.
you hear me?
I hear you fine.
Excellent. So I very much agree with your point about us not really being able to know things. I mean, we are these tiny biological creatures that evolved on this planet in a universe which is vastly beyond our understanding that surrounds us. And then we come along with our fairly small brains and understanding, and we're really drawn to the idea of when a question is posed, it should be left or right, black or white, this or that all these questions we pose are going to give us understandable, true answers. But that's just unrealistic. The universe is vastly beyond our understanding. But I do think that we're not completely defenseless. I mean, after billions of years of evolution, what we are creatures that have some awareness of what's going on around us. And that awareness is functional. I mean, if I start to step off the curb and a bus is coming, I see it. I compute the probability of getting run over and I step back. I'm not a hapless creature staring at the screen with no opportunity or chance to have a reaction against it. So I step out of the way of the bus. I have a perception of what's going on around me, which isn't an understanding of the universe and how it works. It's a much smaller thing. It's a sort of a functional understanding of what's going on around me right now that influences whether I can continue to survive and propagate, because those are the only two things that really mean anything to us as biological creatures. Because the whole point of biology and life is to survive and to propagate. And we look out from these eyes at a world, and that's our challenge. Can I survive? Can I propagate? And I'm here for a while, and then I'm gone. And there are no absolute answers. It's just, it is what it is. And yet we, as you said, Robert, we have this conceit that if we understand a few things, well, we can extrapolate it. And yes, I understand the whole universe. I mean, that's hilarious. We barely understand ourselves most times. I don't think that's in the form of a question. It's more, I think, in the form of agreeing with you.
Okay, well, I agree with what you just said, so there is no question for, you know, there's nothing for me to reply to. By the way, I'm seeing everyone again, so I'm happy. I'm easily satisfied.
Okay, perhaps I should read this question from the chat. What are your insights about mystical experience and how that can create issues and just being okay with life as it usually is? It seems that many teachers infer that 24/7 mystical experience is the goal of enlightenment.
Well, it depends on what you mean by mystical experience. When I lift a rock in the garden and see all the life going on underneath that little rock, of which I'm usually unaware, is that a mystical experience? I think so. If you're waiting for some God to walk in and shake hands with you, I think you might have a long wait.
This person is asking about messages from Tony Parsons and Jim Newman.
Well, you know, I did an interview with Jim, and that's online. It's on my YouTube page and elsewhere. And I think Jim and I had a rather honest and interesting conversation. So I don't think I should just make a judgment at this point in a few words. If this person who's asking is really interested in that, go ahead and look at the interview and see what you think.
Yes, next question. I was just waiting. I'm surprised with all these people here. No one's jumping in, but do you have an opinion about mediumship, receiving messages from the dead?
I do have an opinion, but I don't think my opinion is final or dispositive is the right word I was searching for. I don't think that my opinion decides the matter. This is a phenomenon that's been reported on for centuries. I have an opinion, but I don't think my opinion matters that much.
Somebody said John Troy raised his hand several times. If he's not doing it virtually, then I don't see it because I'm only looking at Robert. So if you're doing it like this, like the old fashioned way, I didn't see you. Sorry. Go ahead.
The elephant in the meditation room is unconsciousness. No one is speaking about it. And unconsciousness is ineffable. There's there's no knower, there's no experiencer, there's no time, there's no space. And regardless of what precipitates unconsciousness, whether it's flatlining or nerval samadhi or dreamless sleep or feigning or coma or forever before you were born, the utter naught of it still remains. You cannot differentiate. Some call unconsciousness Turiya or Parabrahman for lack of a better word, and then say it's timeless. That means eternity in that regard doesn't mean time ticking off. There's no venue for that to occur. More akin to stillness that never started, and something that started is going to last a long time. So what these non-dual people do, they come upon the veil of the ineffable, of unconsciousness, and paint their air castles. And put forth that they know something that somebody else doesn't. It's just entertainment. It's glorified entertainment for a captive audience. It's a sham. Religion paints on the veil of the ineffable an air castle that's totally fiction, and no two are alike. The real takeaway is that unconsciousness is profoundly benign. If you survive it, no problem. Nobody grumps about dreamless sleep. If you go in for major surgery, 1 minute you're laying on the gurney getting ready to go in, and the next second you're in the recovery room. All the time and space and conversation and thought, all of it utterly gone and not retrievable. And there's nothing bad that happened. All the doctrines of sin are vanished. There's nothing but good news. There's nothing to be afraid of. And you can put words like nerval samadhi on this state, or turiya, or you can just say I was unconscious. Same. Many times people would go to Ramana Maharshi, and the poor guy, the guy never read any of the books. He ran away from home because he had a panic attack, and he didn't want the responsibilities of a household or anything like that. He dropped out like a kid in the hippie kid, and ran away from home. Didn't say anything. Then a Hindu yogi discovered him, noticed a certain peace or stillness about it, and named him Ramana Maharshi and built this thing. But then this yogi, his name was Kavya Kantha, turned all these devotees over to him. There had hundreds of devotees coming to kiss his feet, and he had to speak to them some way. So this Hindu yogi had to tutor Ramana Maharshi in a vocabulary to speak to these people in a language they would understand. For instance, they would ask him about reincarnation, for instance, and he would weave it into Hindu mythology in kind of a way, but go along with that air castle painted on that veil. And then he'd finish off and say, the truth is there's no such thing as reincarnation. That's the truth. And he did that numerous times after spilling out all this Hindu garbage. But that's who he was talking to. That was the language that they understood, the culture. He was raised a Brahmin. His mama was on him all the time. She was a strict Brahmin. But he would bring people back to your dreamless sleep, and how bad off were you there? Why are you worried about death? It's simple. Doesn't need all the religious stuff around it or anything. To be as you are is as simple as it gets. Natural, simple. Whatever that is. States of consciousness are always changing. There's no state of consciousness that's permanent. Every state of change of consciousness morphs into something else, and into something else, into something else. The only constant thing is this periodic unconsciousness that we go into every night and like it in hindsight. We feel rested. No air castles, no philosophy, no nothing. So that's where these hucksters play, behind the veil of the ineffable. They paint their air castles, and it's all a sham. Where's the seeker in dreamless sleep? There isn't one. There's nothing else either. Doctrines of sin are just more air castles painted on the veil of the ineffable that frighten people. Make them think of afterlife. There's something called an afterlife that we don't know anything about. Seems like the afterlife is in kids. That's how DNA works. Seems like you wouldn't even need DNA to do what it does if everybody's living forever. It doesn't add up. So speaking of one spiritual experience, that's just one in an infinite number that's coming down to everybody. It's all mixed up, and there's no sameness in any of it. Non-duality is unconsciousness. Duality is consciousness. Seer and seen arise and set together. You cannot take the seer from the seen and throw the seen away and have the seer living up in space with no eyes to see, no nose to smell, no mouth to taste, no ears to hear, no brain to paint pictures, no fingers to touch, no genitalia, no nothing. Horrors. Horrors. Okay, conscious. Bullshit. And we look around, the religions are based on hate. And let me explain why I say that. Because their good God hates this thing called evil. Well, there's many sets of good and evil as there are people. Whatever pisses you off is evil, and whatever pleases you is good. But the kitty doesn't know it, trees don't know it, the plants doesn't know it, the grass doesn't know it, elephants don't know it, fish don't know it. It comes from these doctrines of sin. They say how bad such an evil puts out model of behavior whether it means you go to hell and burn forever or you get reincarnated as an untouchable. The threat and fear is still there with no need for it. So I say the attention for the non-duality crowd, if they're really interested in non-duality, it should be on unconsciousness. And when I had a friend whose son died in an automobile accident, it didn't always kill him, but he was brain dead, young, beautiful man, beautiful body. I went over to Duke Hospital and went into his room just after they had him in there, and he was there, and he was being respirated. He had an EEG running, and it was flat. And about that time, the parents came in, the doctor came in, and I was privy to the talk. That talk was about harvesting organs and how that would happen. They would bring in people who needed all the different organs, get them into the operating rooms throughout the hospital, harvest all of his parts, and then distribute them out to all these people who needed those parts, who had a living brain, because his brain was dead. So they agreed. I was there when that decision went, while he's still on the respirator, to harvest his parts. They knew damn well that brain, that consciousness was not going to return. And they knew that there's no spirit or anything. That was an animal with a dead brain. And if it wasn't kept on a respirator, it wouldn't survive. They knew what they were doing. Now a lot of people have a new kidney, another new kidney, a heart, lung, eyes, different part organs, liver, transplanted to a host of other people who had brains that were conscious. I think these are facts. These doctors were going on facts.
John, I've heard you say a lot of great things. When you were down here a few years ago, we did that gathering. Some of the things you said were brilliant, and this is definitely one of your best statements. I love the part about non-duality is unconsciousness, and consciousness is duality. That seems so obvious, and yet the people who are seeking non-duality and to be conscious of it when it's happening don't really see it that way. Am I right?
You're correct. You're correct. This New Age crowd on non-duality is just as off base as MAGA.
Yeah, and MAGA's pretty. Speaking of MAGA, this is kind of a beautiful day. The trial started this morning in New York. Right. You can run, but you can't hide.
We're all rooting for the porn star.
Yeah, her nickname for Trump is Tiny.
Is this knowable, this idea of the subject object mutually arising?
Well, when you have a dream, you're there. When you don't, you're not. Every single time they arise together and they dissipate together. When you go into unconsciousness, everything disappears together. Time, space, the venue, all of it. disappears. You ever had a little bit of anesthesia? It'll teach you real quick. The brain is very biological, and after 2 minutes with no oxygen blood going in it, it's useless. That's a fact. And you can dream you're dying and wake up and be fine, but you can't die when you're alive and wake up being fine. So that's discernment to tell the difference between a dream and here. Mortal reality. If I cut my hand in a dream, I wake up, there's no blood on the sheets, and my shoes are still by the bed. So there's a difference in the dream and this. And there's a difference between the dream, this, and dreamless sleep or unconsciousness. So unconsciousness is non-duality. There's no subject or object. There's no knower known pulling and playing with each other. There's no seen and seer together. Both gone. When one comes back, the other comes back. See, when you wake up, seer and seen emerge together. You go to sleep, they fall together. Consciousness is a mortal function of the brain, and it's as silly to try to separate the function of the brain, which is consciousness, and the physical brain. It's like separating seeing in the eyeball or hearing in the eardrum or touching in fingers. The function and the organ are synonymous. The heart beats. You don't have a heartbeat without a heart. You don't have a heart without a heartbeat. They go together. These are things that go together. And these non-dualists want to duel apart all of that stuff. They think that somehow consciousness is going to float up out of the brain and survive. Or maybe go usurp some precious young child's body, some decrepit old soul, go into this little baby's body to work out his old sins. How disgusting. Give that fresh baby, every form of life is unique and beautiful as it is. Not with some old decrepit soul in there trying to work out its old problems. Crazy. Crazy people.
Gary Hartman, did you still want to jump in there?
Yeah, I did. Oh, yeah, okay. I remember what I was going to say. I was going to ask Robert. In one of your books, someone was saying, "Are you a materialist or a spiritualist?" And your answer was, "I'm a I don't knowist," which I can relate to that really well. It's like we really know nothing. And as far as like a possible spiritual side to life, I hold it out as a possibility, but I don't know anything much about it. You know, I do know I'm a primate with a brain so such and such size, you know, and I know what I know as far as being a human being, you know, but I think people that are interested in spirituality, a lot of times they want to think that there's more than just this human being body that lives and dies and asks the question, why?
Yeah, so I'm not clear if you have a question for me about that.
How do we know there's not a spiritual side to life? Just because it's not apparent.
Yeah. Well, it's impossible to negate anything. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if I tell you, I think this was Bertrand Russell, it was Bertrand Russell said, suppose I tell you there's a teacup and saucer floating out in space between the Earth and the moon, but it's too small to see. Or another one is someone shows you a closed box, a sealed box, and says, there's a bed bug inside, or there's a beetle inside. You can't really negate it. You'd have to tear the box apart, and even if you did, the beetle might jump out when you don't notice. So a claim like there's a beetle in this box is unverifiable. It's just unverifiable. So when we start out, it's unverifiable. I think that's enough. I don't want to give another philosophical exposition.
That's okay. I like the expositions. I was enjoying what Mr. Troy was saying there. But he did say something about, some people believe that when they die, they have a spirit that lives on. I don't know anything about that. It's possible, I guess.
Well, nobody else does either. That's the point. No. Oh,
But he
okay.
was talking like he knew that wasn't true.
What John was saying, as I understood it, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think I understood it, was that most of what we call spirituality comes into being because people imagine that you have to do something in order to avoid being in a bad place when you die. And what John was saying is, you don't have to learn samadhi while you're here. There's a natural samadhi that simply occurs. It occurs in dreamless sleep. It occurs in anesthesia. And we can assume that at death, since the brain will be dead, and we've been using the brain all these years to be conscious, we won't be conscious, and that will be the ultimate samadhi. Yes. So that if and I'm down with that myself. Do I know it for a fact? No, I can't know anything for a fact.
Yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
It's like the evidence would point to that. That's it. There's nothing after that.
Okay.
I think this is pretty cool, being alive, and it's pretty amazing and astounding that we're even here talking.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I think too, Gary.
And
So when
I like to concentrate on that in my life. It's like what's happening here.
Yeah, me too.
Right. I mean, they are assuming this and assuming that. I would say I would listen to someone who says, okay, this is my experience of what has happened, rather than assumptions.
Okay, well, I'll respond to both you and Gary at the same time, I hope. When I first started looking into this matter, which is a philosophical question, what is truth? Or how can we know anything? When you start to investigate, how can you know anything? The more you look into it, well, I'll speak personally, the more I looked into it, the more I began to see that you can't actually know anything for sure or for certain. What you have is your own thoughts, your own impressions of the world, your own perceptions, and your feelings. And any one of those can be distorted, mistaken, affected by your digestion or some psychedelic substance that you imbibed. So the faculty of knowing is not absolute. It's anything that you think you know can be called into question. So in a way, seeking truth is a dead end. And that's when people split off, when they see that, or maybe they haven't even gotten there, but they split off and go into religion instead, because religion is a set of beliefs that you are handed And you either have faith, as they call it, which means I accept this blindly on no evidence, or you don't. If you don't have faith in religion, which is where I am, then you come to a place of absolute ignorance of what any of this is. And that's the place that I found myself many years ago, probably 30, 25, 30 years ago. And from that understanding came this kind of awakening. I had a very sudden kind of kensho, which I've described, but after that, it was like a 10-year process of accepting that I was awake in the way that certain people have been awake before me, and people after me will be awake in this way. It's part of being human, coming to this understanding that I can't really know anything ultimately. Where that leaves me is in a state of compassion for myself and others, because we're all ignorant and we all have desires to know, and a state of loving in a small way the people and other sentient beings who are in my life. Just understanding that we're all here together and we don't know what that is. And the best thing that we can do is love one another, be open and compassionate and kind to one another. When I was asked why I don't call myself a teacher, because how can you teach that? How can you teach someone to have a broken heart because an animal dies who was your favorite pet, but a pack of dogs just tore her to pieces? That happened to the black cat Ruby that I've shown in my photographs. I loved her and she loved me. She was the photographer's cat because she was a black cat, black and white. And she loved me. She would hang out with me. We had a great thing going on. And one day, Katanya and I were out in the yard, heard this screaming, and there were 3 dogs that had gotten in here, and they ate her right before my eyes. Now, I'm living on that level. People keep asking me these philosophical questions and religious questions, and I just don't have the answers. But I'm awake. So put that together, and that's what we got.
Yes, Robert, see from what you have said, I mean, yeah, I know there's deep compassion and love, right? But what you mentioned was there was a before and there was an after. There was a before when you were this Robert,
Yes.
and then there was an after when you were seeing the world in a different way.
Yes, that's right. That's what it means to be human. You learn. You learn from experience if you have an open mind.
Yes. So technically, there is a kind of shift in the way we perceive the world.
Absolutely. There's a huge shift. My entire life changed when I had this first Kensho and the subsequent awakening. I had a career as a photographer going on, and I was doing really well with it. And once I had this understanding, I felt that that's not the work that I really needed to do in this world. And I changed. I went back to school and got my psychology degrees and opened a psychotherapy practice. So instead of showing photographs to people, I was engaging with people directly. And that's what I've been doing with my life. And I think without that sudden awakening, I might have just been a self-centered, somewhat famous photographer, probably.
Yeah, so it's also like what people have spoken about so far. I mean, it was interesting, and you could see that it came from people that I don't know, like have experienced this, because I mean, from the way they talk. But like, if you look at what Gary was saying, you know, about non-duality. I mean, non-duality is has been like here for ages. It's not radical non-duality. It's not non-duality. It's Vedanta. It's Advaita. It's seeped in Hinduism, and it talks to non-duality, to the fact that we are this wholeness, we are this immensity, you know. I don't know, but I mean, that's what I feel. That
Okay, well, so
there's no separation. Even, I mean, Robert, even at a very base level, we're not separate. I need to breathe air every day to live. I'm dependent on that air, you know. I'm connected to that.
yes,
My
okay.
body.
Let me interrupt you, Razia, because I got the point.
Yes.
This is, you see, the word non-duality is used in various ways. It doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. In a sense, my experience is non-dual because all I know is what I know in this moment. Okay, so that's a kind of non-duality. There's only one knowing, and it takes place here right now. So that's a kind of non-duality. But that's not the kind of non-duality that is spoken about in Hinduism, not at all. And in Advaita Vedanta, the idea there is that there's one consciousness. The entire universe is a dream in that consciousness, or a manifestation, that this consciousness is greater than what we call the universe. That's a religious idea. There's no way for a human being to confirm it. You either believe in it or you don't. I don't. I don't disbelieve it. I just don't believe it because I have no way of verifying it. That's how I work. Other people have their own standards. And I'm not saying I'm not recommending my standards. You see, let me take a step back. I've become somewhat well known in the last few years for things that I say, but everything I say is just a personal confession of my own experience. It's phenomenology, as this is formally called. I'm just expressing moment by moment what it feels like to be me and what I think and what I feel. That's not factual. No one else can verify that. The positive influence that I think that I've had is to ask people to question what they believe and to try to find their own mind, not what Vedanta has said or any tradition, but find your own mind. Discard all of these ideas about non-duality, the universe, God, what happens when you die, is there destiny or not? Just throw it all out. And ask yourself, excuse me, let me finish this up.
Sorry.
You just throw it all out. You disrespect all of that. And you say to yourself, without all those things that I've been told since I was a child, if I don't depend on any of that and I just sit here, what am I? What is this? And that, if I'm a teacher, that's what I'm teaching. That's the approach, to just find your own mind and discard religious beliefs. I don't care a fig for Vedanta. It means nothing to me any more than Catholicism does, which is another set of beliefs. And it's a similar set of beliefs in the sense that there's a God up at the top, and in Vedanta there's Brahman. But that's worshipped. And I don't know if there's any basis for worshiping anything, Razia. See, I'm coming from a place of really not knowing and not needing to know. I don't need to know. I need to participate. I'm just speaking personally. I'm not saying that you don't need to know. I'm saying that I know enough. I know enough at this point. I don't need to learn the next thing. I'm coming to the end of my life, and I have a real hunger to just participate, to be with the people I care about, to discuss interesting things, to care for the pets and other animals we have here, and just live without breaking my mind on insoluble questions. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not.
Yes, I understand, because I mean, like when I had this experience or the shift, that was like in my 30s, and I had no knowledge of Vedanta or Advaita or anything, non-duality, nothing. So I wouldn't say that I've been influenced in any way. But what I do know, Robert, is that like I don't feel, I feel that like I am not this body. I know that, like, because I can feel myself, and I can feel that, you know, that that there is more to this. I could feel outside of me, you know. I don't know. And sometimes like I'm lying on my bed and I feel like I'm lifting out of my body, you know. So kind of like things like that, like it's like experiences that I've had that make me wonder, like, I mean, like how can I be just this individual, you know?
Okay,
Getting,
so excuse me, I'll just interrupt to keep it short. So the
yeah.
question that arises for me immediately when you say that is, you say, I know I'm not the body. And I
Yes, in
understand.
that sense, and that it, yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and in the sense that I have experienced this, and in the sense that it's a shared experience. It has been shared. Quite a few people write of these experiences. Some people talk about astral traveling and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know how do I negate that and say that it's
So
not
my
true.
so my question for you is this: understanding what you've just said, and I do understand it. Do you think that you would be having these experiences if you had no body?
No, I didn't say I have nobody. I said
I know,
that I'm
you
not
didn't.
just,
No,
yeah.
Rezia, let me
I
cut
should
to
have
the chase.
qualified it.
Okay, this
I
is
should have
getting too.
qualified and said, yeah,
I'm
that I
sorry.
am not just this body.
Well,
Sorry.
but you see, Rezia, that's not a good answer. I'm not just this
Okay.
body. It's not a good answer. Would you be having any experiences at all without a body?
No, I suppose not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I find myself here as a human primate animal. I know I'm a human primate animal as well as I can know anything. I could be deluded, or I could be dreaming. I could be in someone's computer program from the future. All this is possible. But I have a sense of being a human primate animal and not a soul. I don't have a sense of being a soul, not at all. I have a sense of being a human primate animal who's here with the other animals on this planet. And I have relationships with them, with humans and with non-human animals. And that's all I know. These other feelings that I might have, for example, I'm lying in bed and suddenly I feel empty and the wind is blowing through me, which is an experience I've had quite a few times, of being weightless and empty, and the body was just like a shadow. But I don't think the body really is a shadow. I think the body has a brain, and that feeling of being a shadow was in the brain, being processed and presented to me as feelings. I'm just not willing to jump to this spirituality place where you are born reincarnated with a soul, which is what we get from Vedanta. And that's nonsense. Nobody has any way of verifying such a thing. And that's why I don't really respect Vedanta. It's filled with superstition. So is Catholicism, so is Christianity. It's just filled with superstition. I have no use for it. Am I absolutely sure that there's no God and angels and all this? No, I'm not absolutely sure of it. But I'm pretty sure that the earth isn't 6,000 years old. Pretty sure of that one. And so any religion that tries to teach you that it is bogus. It's just nonsense. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Precia.
Well, we have a lot of other written questions and and hands
Thanks.
raised. Thank you. Did Dennis still have a question? I know you had your hand raised. We also got Gio up next. All right, go ahead, Gio. Gio, you're muted, Gio. Unmute yourself.
Is
There you
it
go.
okay now?
Yes, go
Okay.
right ahead.
It has been raised several times the fact that there is no subject-object relationship. My question to Robert would be, who or what is seeing the fact that there is no subject-object relation?
So if I'm understanding this, you're asking me what observes a lack of a subject-object relation. Is that, do I have it right? What is there,
Yes.
what is there in me that can say such a thing? Is that the question?
Yes, not necessarily in me, whatever. Something is saying that there is no subject-object relationship, which seems to be okay, at least from my point of view. But the question that arises is who or what aspect is seeing this? If it's not a subject, and if it is not an object either, what is seeing the fact that there is no such relationship?
Yeah, okay, I get it. Well, we don't really see that. We use reason to arrive at it. If the idea is presented, we can examine it with reason and either accept it or reject it, or to say, I'm not sure, based on that information. For example, I could say to you, you and I are speaking now, but I don't really know that you exist. All I know is that I have an image in my mind of someone on my screen speaking to me. But it's all me. It's my perceptions. It's my understanding. It's my computer screen. I don't really know who or what you are. What we do socially is we learn to assume that other minds work similarly to mine. But that's a big assumption. And when you really test it, you find that a lot of minds don't work the way mine do. That's my experience. And so, who is the subject in that situation is my perception. Am I making sense, Gio?
Yes, I am following you, but still the question remains that if there is no difference, there is no separation between the subject and the object, something is attesting this fact.
Something is contesting, did you say?
No, attesting is
Attesting,
yes,
yes, it's attesting to that. What's attesting to that fact in my experience, in my mind, is logic, reasoning. See, I reason that I can't get inside your mind. I only have this one mind, and the world arises in that space. I think that's pretty clear. As John Troy was saying, when you put that to sleep with anesthesia, for example, there is no experience. So the experience is taking place in a living human primate animal mind. So all I know is what I hear, think, feel, and reason and conclude based on experience. But there's no really knowing those things. We can only have a point of view. I'm expressing my point of view. You may have a different point of view, but I can never know your point of view. When you tell me about it, I can understand what you're telling me through your words, but I don't understand what it's like to be you. How could I? I can assume Gio is like me he has these feelings, he's sentimental, and he's a little bit worried about such and such. I can assume that, but I might be wrong. Do you see that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what attests to it. What attests to it is my ignorance of anything about you. And all I know is the image of you that I have in my mind. So that's a kind of non-duality.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one mind,
Yeah.
but not one mind for the universe. It's one mind for this animal.
Yeah. Yes, when there is no relationship subject object, it doesn't matter if we call it everything is object or everything is subject. It's just one thing. It's just one perspective.
Well, okay, but you see that one easily slides into this other form of non-duality where there's only one mind, and I don't buy that one. Could be right, but there's no evidence for it. The evidence that I have is that I'm a separate person who can understand things that other people don't understand, and someone else can understand something that I don't understand. So this is taking place somehow within oneself. The problem is that what does it mean to say oneself? You see, then if we begin to describe that, it begins to get wider and wider. Like Rezia was saying earlier, well, I have to breathe all the time. So I'm not just myself, I'm also the air around me. And that air needs to be, oxygen has to be generated. We need the trees in order to survive. If you go down that path, then I'm in total agreement. If that's what you mean by non-duality, that this world is one system and I'm a part of it, fine, I'm good with that. That makes sense to me. But this other kind of non-duality makes no sense to me. None.
No, I would never say that there is one mind, because this one mind is also mind-made. So we have a perpetual regression. If everything is mind, there is no mind either. If
Beautiful.
everything is mind-made, including the mind. So there is
Exactly.
no way to point to a mind. And this
Okay, so I think you and I are on the same page, judging from what you
yeah, I
say.
think so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Really,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to say before you continue,
Please.
Walter, it's just a pleasure to be here and to be speaking this way with so many nice people who think about these things. It's been a joy in my life, all the people I've gotten to meet online and through my books. And I'm enjoying it very much. Just want to express that. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Robert. Sophie has a question. It says, does trauma still arise when you are not there? And can psychotherapy help with that?
The first thing was, does trauma exist when you're not there? But you are there. If you were not there, you wouldn't know anything at all about trauma or anything else. We are here. We may try to say, I'm only dreaming this, or God's taking care of it, or whatever the fact is, but that's not my experience. My experience is it comes down to you and you alone. You're the center of everything that you know. I think therapy is really good for trauma. If someone is feeling traumatized, sitting down with someone who's trained to listen to that and reframe it, which is usually the work in traumatic distress, to reframe it into something that one can accept and digest. See, this kind of trauma, the reason that the trauma is so troublesome is we can't digest it. I'll give an example from my practice. A woman was raped, and she comes in to see me, and she feels guilty. She feels guilty for being attacked. How could that be? It makes no sense, but somehow to her it does make sense. Maybe because she had unconscious desires for sex that day and then got it, whatever, it could be anything. So in the therapy, you discuss the events, you go through it a number of times, and you gradually reframe this so that this poor woman can understand that no matter what, it was not her fault. She wasn't asking for it. Rape is a crime. You don't go around asking to be attacked. So that's an example. I don't know if that answers the question.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, so are there anybody want to jump in with one last question for Robert before we end?
Thanks for doing this, Walter.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it, everybody. That was a lot of fun. All right, take care. Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Walter and Robert and everyone who
you.
shared.
Cheers. Thank you.
Robert.
Thank you.
Walter.
Thank you.